Live from Lincoln and broadcasting across the state of Nebraska, it's the Average Joe Sports Show. This is the place for Husker sports with the biggest names, the best interviews, and all the inside scoops.
I got a front row seat with a big tub of buttered popcorn and a greasy half-live chicken leg.
Now, here are your hosts, Chris Schmidt and Elijah Herbel.
Weekend is here. It is the Average Joe Sports Show. We got to get the
and Bill Doleman and Mark Kraynak.
We gotta get the names right.
I've been busy. It's been state basketball. Okay, I've had a lot on my plate.
No, I'm not piling on you.
You get a triple double, bro? How'd you do?
We're gonna blame the sound guy. We're gonna blame the voice guy on that. Voice guy's got to get back to us.
Where my Nuggets at today, Mark? I didn't get triple double. Jokic 30, 20, and 20 last night. That's a bonkers game. No one in NBA history has done that.
Who'd they play?
The Suns.
Doesn't count.
Kevin Durant.
I'm just messing with you.
Doesn't count.
They're not very good this year. Don't get me wrong, but they still got some players.
Yeah. How are we doing? Kraynak, good to see you. Billy D, good to see you.
Morning.
I've seen you all week. Good to see you, though.
I see you. Oh, I like what Bill just put there. Hold on, I'm going to update my profile little image, my name tag. Yeah. If you're watching this thing,
we're selling our souls to this.
Is slanging. He is slanging your business here. We'll just put or here or both.
It's a Groupon.
My dream is to have NASCAR suits for all of us.
Oh yeah, wouldn't that be good? Oh man, just walking around, just logoed up.
We'd
just
be
like the NBA does.
We'd be so safe from fires on a Saturday morning. Fire suits,
except for the one we start ourselves at 7:51 every weekend edition. It is 7 days a week with the Average Joe Sports Show, Monday through Friday, 4 to 6. Weekend edition, 7:45-ish. I believe the starting gun was fired at 57:52 this morning. We'll do Sunday Live, 10:30 tomorrow.
Ish.
Yeah, ish. There's tip-off at 11:30. That's a hard time with Nebraska, Iowa.
Yeah.
Lot to get into.
Going to that one. That'll be good.
Are you?
Forward to that one. It's the Fran Swan song, probably.
Yeah.
Probably. That's all the talk, right? Like, is that the last game he's coaching? It's not official, but I've heard very little to say he'll be back. Outside of his comments that I don't know if you'd expect much different, from someone who's in his position, but interesting. And where is Iowa going to go after him? Right.
Well, let's just get into this because it is kind of a fascinating topic. And Coach Izzo alluded to it a little bit earlier this week, right after the win Thursday night, the come from behind win by Michigan State when they beat Iowa in Iowa City. And he's like, careful what you wish for. So there's two things. One, a coach is going to say nice things about another coach that he always beats because he likes having him in the league.
Yep.
Sign the guy to a lifetime contract. It's a guaranteed win. The other thing is careful what you wish for when you blow out a guy that's had pretty decent success. Can we all nod our head and stare ahead straightly? Yeah. Careful what you wish for when it comes to getting rid of somebody that's, I don't know, winning 9 games a year, 10 games a year. But you better upgrade. And it's not always an upgrade. The one program in my life that's done better after they've whacked somebody has been Ohio State. And I'm not saying Ryan Day is better than Urban Meyer, but I mean, there's one another national championship. They're about it program-wise. To me, that they moved on. They moved on from a coach.
They didn't whack Urban though.
Yeah, kind of. Somebody had enough juice to make it uncomfortable for him to stay there.
Urban does find a way to you can't use the word that you guys were just saying, himself. He finds a way to do that himself, right? Where he fires himself. I'm not going to say what, So that's kind of the difference, but I don't know.
It's just
it seems though. I know you're a big Izzo guy, Chris, and I am too.
Junior and Mama are real big Izzo guys.
Can we say though that, and I would honestly say, is there are not many better coaches in any sport than Izzo. We all agree on that, guys, and he's awesome. He's incredible.
Yeah. And he's old and crusty, and he screams at his players. And I like the fact that he can survive in today's world being who he is.
And he's doing it in East Lansing,
which is nice. It's not Lansing. East Lansing's nice.
Oh, Lansing's garbage.
He also takes his role as a dean of coaches pretty seriously too, and that's part of why he probably comes to the defense of Fran. But had Izzo not said that, had Izzo not come to his defense as much as he did, I'm not sure we'd even be talking about whether or not he may be gone, he may not. Like, the writing is clearly on the wall. And so you have Nebraska finishing their entire regular season against Iowa at home. Fran, he's walking dead. So what is Iowa's attitude going to be like? And considering that Nebraska's problem, I heard you all talking about this last Sunday. I bet you that's a great time. Never mind. No, I heard you all talking about that last Sunday about, Nebraska's Jekyll and Hyde.
Jekyll and Hyde.
Can you tell I haven't had enough coffee?
Yeah, I was gonna say it's early.
Go ahead and heckle me. You can go ahead and heckle me for that. But their approach to playing, their approach to the game has been, it's so up and down, right? So now you're getting a team that's walking dead. They all know that their coach is, against a team that may or may not bring their A game and their effort level at Pinnacle Bank Arena. And it is really tough to call tomorrow. It's really tough to call tomorrow what you're going to see from either team. Is it going to be enough that it's the end of the year and they got the border rivalry and the general dislike and borderline hate for one another to where you're going to see them really get after it? Or is it a couple of teams that are just trying to run out the clock on the season? It's tough to know.
That's a good question.
I think for Nebraska, it's fortunate the game is in Lincoln and not at Iowa, because the motivation may not be there. I mean, Iowa still has the winner goes to the Big Ten tournament, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's so I would think that that's enough juice for Nebraska playing at home on Senior Day. You had a great effort for the most part.
Can you believe that?
Yeah. You had 2 weeks ago, we're talking about 10 seeds and all that stuff. Look, I see Fran McCaffrey as a guy who is standing on his lawn telling the press, I am not going anywhere. And Cadence Realty Group drops a sign in his front yard. A 2-minute truck are hauling out his sofa, and his wife's packing up the truck like they're moving to Beverly. So that's pretty much a done deal. You would think that he's gone, and they probably have made overtures out to, Morgantown and DeVries and, maybe somebody else that has some type of tie to the state of Iowa. I just would think that it's a foregone conclusion that they're going to move on, and so what motivation is there for to come into Lincoln and one last hurrah for the coach? Is he that beloved at this stage?
I never got the sense that he was.
They're going to rally around it. I would think that it's just time to move on. It's just time for everybody to break up and go. Rick Barnes, I say this a lot. Rick Barnes ran out his time at Texas. Time to go. I'll go to Tennessee, build a national power there. Not that Fran McCaffrey is going to go someplace and build a national power, but it's just time for them to break up. And maybe he's the only one who doesn't know it.
I want to say one thing. I know we can probably get into this a little bit more tomorrow, but one more thing I want to say before we bring Brandon Vogel into the show. I know he's standing by in the green room. Bill, you mentioned the emotions of Senior Day on a Sunday, and this is a conversation that Justice and I had off the air yesterday after the show ended. The thing about Senior Day is emotions run high, and yes, sometimes you get the best performance from guys. You know what? They don't want to lose on Senior Day. Their team rallies around them. Other times, though, the emotions of senior day can take away from the game, where it's so emotional before the game. Your family's there. They give you that jersey down on the floor. And
you get your shadow box. Yeah, you get
by the time the game starts, I don't want to say you're emotionally drained, but your emotions are elsewhere and focused on other things besides the basketball game, focused on the last 4 to 5 years. Just with what we've seen emotionally and psychologically from this team this year, I can't say which way it's going to go for the Huskers tomorrow. Yeah, hey, maybe they're locked in. Maybe it's the best performance of the season. Maybe it's a team that's unfocused, that's worried about other things, emotionally drained. I don't know which Husker basketball team we're going to get tomorrow based on senior day. I'd like to think it's the best performance, but this isn't a team that has shown me time and time again that they're going to rise to the challenge whenever emotions are high, whenever things aren't going their way, whenever things are weird. Like, I can't tell you which Husker version we're going to get tomorrow based on the fact that it's senior day.
That is Elijah Herbel. It's Mark Kraynak. It's Bill Doleman. It's Chris Schmidt. It's the weekend edition of the Average Joe Sports Show with counterread, counterread.com. Brandon Vogel is in his football office. We got to shout out our folks in the stream. Can like and subscribe to the Average Joe Sports Show on YouTube, on Twitter, AJ Sports Radio. Can watch on KFOR, Facebook. Jeff Snitley here. Part of the Boulder Peace Treaty. Snitley was here when the bars closed. Love you. That's nice. Uncle Larry is in. Jake
right
is
back. Got to let the dog out. The way he's acting right now.
No,
I'll be right back.
Do it. Great X sprinting. Jake is here. Justin is here. Kobe is in. The other day, Black Hills Brennan, fella. The old morning stupid jackrabbit. Top of the morning, the stupid jackrabbit. So Black Hills Brennan frustrated with South Dakota State.
Their Summit League performance last night.
Yes, Coach Brandon. Good to have you, Coach Brandon. Thank you much. I heard there is a box full of Orange Bowl 1980s watches in the belly of Memorial Stadium. Coach Brandon's asking, will they be sold at the garage sale? Can I get the players to sign the random helmets? That's a good question, man. That's nice. Steve is here. Tuck is in. Walter's back in. Cole is here. And we'll keep scrolling to say, hey, Tuck, how are you? Crew back at it. Captain back with us. Brian Snitley, also part of the Boulder Peace Treaty. Game Dog is here. Good to have Game Dog. MK checking in. And we'll say hi to others. Ophelia up. Nice work. is in. Funky Giblets is here. And John in Des Moines says, what's up? Also, Charles is here. Hi, Vogues. I had to get through the starting 5+ shout outs. I appreciate it.
Starting
30. How's Vogues doing this morning, man?
I'm doing all right. How are you guys?
We are good. We are going to talk to you about the Husker games and the garage sale. And you and I had some fun with the memorabilia. We're talking a little bit about coaching carousel and, the move on momentum with Fran. I want to twist this back to Nebraska football and talk to the panel. Was there a game? And this is not you saying, yes, I want a coach's head on a platter. We've never been kind of that way with taking an axe and going after a coach.
There was one time for me that after that Georgia Southern loss, that post-game show, I was.
No, you could be hot then, but you weren't like questioning the fact that the guy didn't know football. You just questioning what maybe you were. My point is Nebraska's had the turnstile like the Tennessees, like the Miamis, and they've moved on from coaches. Was there a move on moment for you guys with some of these different coaches? And it's just fascinating because right now Fran's been at Iowa 10 years? Is that right?
Longer than that, isn't it?
That's longer than that.
15, I think.
Okay,
Yeah.
so you're beyond these 7-year itch. You've doubled it. And there's just some staleness to it. But is there a move-on moment for you, Vokes, with any of Nebraska's former coaches, one that weighed heavier than the other, where you just said, I don't know if this is going to happen?
I think the clearest one of the times, that I've been covering Nebraska was probably Nebraska's loss at Wisconsin under Pelini. Was that 2013 or 2014?
It's 2014, the Melvin Gordon game.
Yeah, when they were up, 17-3 or whatever it was, and then it looked like they restarted and played an entirely different game. And Wisconsin had been that team that Nebraska couldn't beat after beating them in 2011 or 2012. And it was just the Pelini losses at that point had gotten so extreme.
Horrific.
I mean, they would win 9 games and they would have good players and they would be a good team. But when they lost at that stage in 2013, 2014, boy, did they get their money's worth when it came to those losses. And it's not like I walked into the post game press conference. I was at that game and said, yeah, it's just there's got to be a change made. It was more like, I remember Bo walking off and it had started to snow and it was dark and cold. And the Wisconsin fans, of course, were giving him a hard time. Nebraska fans too. And just watching him walk off. And my memory of that was like, yeah, I just don't think it's going to be different than this. And at the end of that season, a couple games later or a couple weeks later, that is a decision that I, of course, made, which is an entirely different context now, but not that dissimilar from, I think, Iowa basketball, if you wanted to draw that parallel.
It's Brandon Vogel with us from Counter Read, counterread.com, at Brandon L. Vogel on Twitter. Kraynak is back. How's Tucker?
He's well. That is a great question you just asked about when you were ready to kind of move on from somebody. I never got to that point with Frank.
Not asking any of you that about me. We're talking football.
Talking about coaches in general.
Yes.
Yeah. This is good. Chris, I've never had that moment with you either. Obviously. Look at us after all these years.
1998.
Yeah. I never got that way with Frank. I never got to that
neither.
moment where I was like, it's time to move on. I did get the, Penn, obviously Colorado 2001 and then Penn State the following year, 2002. I was like, okay, something's broken here. Fix it, Frank. And I thought he did. Thought he got it. Anyway, so that never happened with him. With Callahan, had to have been 07 USC when, you might as well have just been playing with 4 guys on defense. It didn't matter. They were not interested in any way at playing football for Bill Callahan that day or for Kevin Cosgrove. So it would have been that game for Bill Callahan. For Bo, I don't know if I ever got there with him either. Not sure I ever got the Southern Miss 2004. What to say? I was ready to move on from Billy C. Fair. That's a good call out too. That was pretty early on in Bill's tenure. I think that was game 1, 2.
I think the 07 Missouri game for me, where they were, I think it was in Columbia, and
where it just looked like 7-on-7.
Well, there was a little resistance early, and then they just got destroyed. Those were good Missouri teams, but they just got dismantled. But what's the funniest part? I'm sitting in a bar, shocker. I'm watching Nebraska give it to Texas, only to lose. Right, only to lose in 07. That's the birth of Joe Gans, because finally somebody.
He was a revelation, wasn't he?
Somebody didn't block the edge guy, and Sam Keller got spiked like a lawn dart and busted his collarbone. But I think it was Jamal Charles that went for 1,700 yards in the fourth quarter. But you're torn because this is the nail in the coffin. This loss makes it a 7-loss season. But Nebraska was tearing up Texas, and You're like, all
out
right.
of nowhere too. Finally playing defense out of nowhere.
And Mac Brown's like shaking in the post game, like what just happened? I survived. So I mean, there's 100 people in this bar that are just torn. Where, all right, Texas is on fire, and we have the match. And the other part of it is, dude, if he wins this, does he stick around? Does he get to a bowl game?
Was it the following week though, where they got curb stomped by Oklahoma State?
No, that was
that was ugly. That was
October.
Nothing at half, something like that.
October 5th. It was October 16th because on the 15th. No, that was October. Yeah, because the 15th, the following Monday, it was Goodfellas time for Steve Peterson.
Oh yeah, because I remember that game was the first time little 8-year-old Elijah was ever like, "You got to fire the coach. You got to move on." And at halftime, I'm like, "I've never heard that before at Memorial Stadium. It's time."
And he grabbed his Mr. Microphone and Mattel toys and went down to his basement and did his first talk show. I was ready to move on from Osborne after that loss in 1973 to Missouri, but unfortunately they didn't listen to me when I was 7. But
I should have.
The Callahan years are somewhat forgettable for me because I've just tried to block that whole thing out. But there was that loss to Texas Tech. Didn't Texas Tech hang 70
to 10 or something?
And then there's two of them.
Gross.
The Texas Tech, after the game, it was just like this nonchalant, like, well, that happens sometimes, and it really wasn't that big a deal. And I'm like, we don't give up 70 points in a season, and it's not. It was just like, well, that's they're just better than we are, so we'll just move on, and hopefully the next directional school we play, we'll do better. That always mystified the post-game reaction from that one mystified me. Another game that sticks out to me, I was doing a game at San Diego State, and I don't remember who the two teams were, but my producer was from Kansas. And so the game that's taking place between Nebraska and Kansas, I'm getting play-by-play in my ear while we're working this game, but my producer just everything that was watching this game somehow, some way, and telling me everything that's going on. And so I'm like getting play-by-play of Nebraska getting destroyed by Kansas. And there's nobody coming off the bench to save Nebraska in that game. And those were the ones of the Callahan era that just have always stuck with me. The
Kansas was bad.
Up to Texas Tech, and the Kansas was.
That's the only game where I started rooting against Nebraska that I can remember, where I was like, just score 80. Just like score 80 and end this thing now. Like, don't even let Callahan out off the field. Like, just seriously, like, make him go out a normal, like, public gate. He does not get to go in the locker room. He is to take off all Nebraska things right now. Leave him on the field. Like, get him out of here. Like,
and I got the feeling after games like that, he'd be fine with that. Okay,
yeah,
no biggie.
Hey, look, it's one seat.
I coached in the Super Bowl.
Vogues, how about the Riley era?
Look, this is just turning into a average Joe sports show Saturday morning therapy session.
It's okay.
Well,
we're just getting you ready for basketball tomorrow.
Yeah, we kind of need
the Riley era. The Riley era was a strange one because, like, Nebraska obviously in 2017 wasn't going that way, the right direction. But you had the Northern Illinois loss, which everyone can point to, and the cost Sean Eichhorst his job. But it was only year 3 for the Riley era, and it was just, I remember it being a strange period because it was like, okay, Frost is blowing things up year 2 at UCF. Does he want the Nebraska job? Is he going to be available? Is somebody else going to snatch him up? So it was. I kind of felt like you got to the end of the season and in 2017 and be like, yeah, that was a fireable season for Coach Mike Riley, even at the end of year 3. But it almost seemed dependent on were you going to land Frost? And who knows if they would have made the change, even if they weren't able to get Frost. So there wasn't really a game in there that I recall where it was like, oh yeah, this just isn't going to work. Because I mean that Nebraska team kind of came into the season at least from my point of view, with lowered expectations from a team that was 9-4, but was probably closer to like 7-6 in reality in terms of like what they were capable of.
My move on moment was, Tommy Armstrong's out there with a blown out hamstring, and Iowa's just beating the hell out of him. I mean, it was so weird to see Nebraska give Wisconsin everything they wanted during that era and not finish it against Wisconsin, but yet against Iowa after the 2015 Iowa game, that really good Iowa team that went to the Big Ten title game, Iowa just physically beat up Nebraska. Nebraska's toughness factor just died, and it was allowed to.
Oh, totally.
The guy that I really enjoyed talking with was Mark Banker. I'd see him on the golf course, and Bankert had a freaking enough. In that post game.
Couldn't you see him as the sixth box on this show? Like out of a lot of the former coaches, wouldn't he just sort of slide right in and just be able to just talk with him easily?
No, it's a bloodbath. I bet their practices are bloodbaths. I bet they actually hit people. He was pissed.
In hindsight, that might have been the moment, because that was, him saying like, "We ain't that, man." As we've know now, you kind of need to be that to survive in the Big Ten if you're not one of the 2 or 3 most talented teams in the league.
I kind of felt like the Mike Riley era was just perpetual spring football. Just, it's just
wow.
It's just like, when's it really going to start?
Yeah.
It just seemed like, there was just like something off in the distance was going to happen at some point, but it just, we're just, everything's nice. Everything's nice, and nobody wins, nobody loses. We all get ribbons, and it just never seemed like the season began. Like you got into October, November, and blood and guts time, right? It was, I don't know, just nice.
Well, I remember how Brandon would put it, and you used much more eloquent words than this, but your point was sort of like, Nebraska's not really running an offense. They just kind of call plays. They just kind of have plays. There's not, it doesn't seem like there's any chess going on. It doesn't seem like you're setting anything up for later. It was just kind of a series of, well, hey, that's in the playbook. Let's try that. Let's go with that. Let's see how that works out. Hey, Tanner Lee, he can really spin it. I think as soon as you started hearing Tanner Lee can really spin it, and spin it became a term, that's about when I was ready.
I think Tanner Lee just threw another pick six.
That was bad. That was god awful.
He seemed like a good enough guy too.
No, Tanner was a nice dude. He just he was.
But so are you all. I don't want you quarterbacking the Huskers though. I just.
Well, so
no offense to you, Brandon. I know you would.
And all of this because Fran McCaffrey might be coaching his last game tomorrow.
Yeah, and I was going to say, it's funny that we're having this conversation, but can I ask you guys the question? Is if it goes the wrong way for Nebraska tomorrow against Iowa, could that be the moment where fans move on from Fred?
No,
it would be a special kind of hell to lose to Iowa at home.
To knock you out in tournament this year?
Because I wouldn't say, you can't say that Fred's base of support is super strong. I think it's almost ambivalent right now. I think it's just people are just like, no, Fred's whatever. If you end the season limping like that,
I think
the Big Ten tournament.
I think Fred's support, people have, and I've done this. I've separated Fred from the team, and I know that's like weird to talk about with the head coach versus his team.
A little bit,
but I look at Fred as a guy who knows basketball. I look at Fred as a guy who has developed some players. I look at Fred as a guy who sees talent, and I look at a guy in Fred that it's his job to acquire talent, but I think it has gone horribly wrong for him with their investment. So
Where are we at with that? So I've heard a lot of talk about that, of the statement being made, and I think you just alluded to it to some degree. Nebraska's NIL with basketball. Is that what you're alluding to? Is just not where it needs to be? Can we talk number? Like, what are we talking about when we say it's not where it needs to be?
I don't have. Vince is already over Fred. Elijah, thank you for opening that door. I'm not over Fred. I like Fred. I hope Fred stays because I think he's good. I think he's a really talented coach. I just know that in this world of college basketball, good luck, because it is about who you can buy, and there are more opportunities to take my ball and go home guy on his 78th program, or AAU kid that doesn't want to be told no, and that's who you're hanging your hat on. And if you hit, you get the Bryce Williams and the Joanne Garys that stick it out and stay. And yeah, they're portal guys, but they played well. Just overall, this team's mental toughness and leadership isn't what it's needed to be with the roller coaster, and that's too bad.
Well, and to me, what's interesting about this conversation is I'm with you, Schmidt. I like Fred. I think Fred can still have success at Nebraska.
I think Fred would go somewhere else and kick ass. I think Nebraska. I know this year's been trying for Nebraska basketball fans, but Fred's a dude when it comes to all of his connections.
Should he lose tomorrow, I would also reach the point of, well, if they fire him, I get it. That's the point.
It's not even a conversation. He has so much money on his contract. It's not even a reality.
I mean, we said the same thing about Scott. Oh, he's going to make it to game 4. The Nebraska's going to save themselves $15 million. And then, oh, never mind. The fan base has turned. That's the thing is, if the fan base turns, there's nothing you can do as an athletic department. Your hands.
FBI Director Trev Alberts had, things in his back pocket possibly to make it not hurt as bad.
I just look at this and I say, I look back at the history of Fred. And what are we talking about right now over the past couple of weeks? It's been, well, Fred, get himself an actual GM, focus on the coaching. He doesn't have to focus on the talent acquisition as much. That's been an issue. You go back a couple years, that was the same. Matt Abdelmassih.
That was the Abdelmassih era where Fred didn't want to jack with recruiting, and look what the psychos he brought in.
Yeah, and then now Fred's the GM of sorts, and you look at the talent acquisition this year, and you go, well, it hasn't been up to par. The team hasn't played great together. It wasn't. Maybe a GM would help things. You already kind of had that with Abdelmassih. I don't know what the recourse is for Fred to turn this into a winning basketball program. I think they're set up for success next year. But if the NIL situation is what it is, and that's what he has to rely upon, I mean, what is there to do?
Here's what you do.
Hear about it, Brandon? What do you hear about it?
No, I just got real quick. Here's what you do. You are getting a check each month, and if you are playing like crap, you get fined or you get that check withheld. It's real simple.
Is that legal?
I don't care.
Dad's withholding your allowance.
Well, that's what it is. Folks, get me off the edge here.
Well, I mean, I think in terms of like where would things stand, and if Nebraska doesn't get it done tomorrow, like I'm with Elijah. Like if it happened, you'd kind of be like, okay, yeah, I can see it. I'd be very surprised if it did, because the thing that stands out to me 3 weeks ago, Nebraska in all the bracketology things was like 70-80% in, and now they're not. Mm-hmm. And when you look at kind of the college basketball landscape, is Nebraska ready? Given that 3 weeks ago it was probably talking like extension and or whatever, because it looked like it was in. It changed really, really quickly. Is Nebraska ready to go out and take a big swing on the coaching market? And my guess would be that's not what they were preparing to do as recently as a month ago. And I don't think you want to be out there if you haven't been putting a plan in place for what the next step for this program looks like. So if that is, relatively close to reality, then I think a bold hire in some sort of GM role. We saw Nebraska be really aggressive with what it was able to do on the football side in terms of staff. Becomes your next best bet.
Lance in the stream, Nebraska would get laughed at nationally if they canned Fred. He won Big Ten Coach of the Year just last season. The optics make it impossible, and basketball-wise, it doesn't make any sense either. It's fair point, Lance. But I think it kind of gets to a larger issue when it comes to Nebraska basketball and kind of the place it holds within the fan base's mind, within the athletic department. Of it, it doesn't seem like it holds much of one, right? It seems like it's just sort of like, hey, we got a basketball team, let's go. It's right. It's never felt. I wouldn't say it's a lack. You can't say there's no investment. Fred himself was a name. Gets paid pretty well. Pinnacle Bank Arena is, as good of a venue as you're going to have. The Hendricks Center, some of the best basketball facilities. So you can't say there's no investment. But I wouldn't say there's a lot of, I guess, attention paid to basketball, right? And I don't know if you can snap that. I don't know how you snap that. I don't know how you change that mentality.
Yeah, I was thinking about it too, because what's the pitch if you're out there, competing for some of the biggest players, be it high school or more likely transfer? You've got top 10 attendance. That's pretty much guaranteed. You got a good arena, got great facilities. I don't think facilities really matter much. So if you're not able to be completely competitive on the NIL front, and I don't know if that's the case, just saying, it kind of becomes, well, there's a lot of great places to play basketball. Nebraska is a pretty good one, but I think there is something to Mark how, basketball is such. I mean, there's a group of like diehard Nebraska basketball fans, of course, that they're like, this is what I live and die with. But for the majority of people, that's not the case. It's a backseat to football, volleyball. And I don't know. I don't know how that comes across when you're out there just trying to land recruits, but it seems like there's something there.
The fact that J-Skers exist tells you kind of all you have to know about the place that Nebraska basketball holds in the collective conscious, right? Like there cannot be many places in America that have a similar situation going on there. Like it'd be one thing if Nebraska did not have a basketball team, then you would totally understand. Yes, be a J-Sker, right? Nebraska has a basketball team. They're Division I. They play in the Big Ten. They exist.
J-Skers just don't have patience, right? They've sold their souls to Creighton basketball. They don't have the patience of Nebraska basketball fans who have been waiting for 100 years for an NCAA tournament win, right? So that's
patient. Like you can just start that chant.
You can say that about the most passionate Nebraska basketball fan. They got patience and they're waiting and they're understanding. Look, Nebraska's athletic department is a corporation, and they've got football that they are all invested in, and they've got a little building that they're going to have, coming up. They're redoing the whole Husker Vision landscape in the North Stadium. Basketball is, let's just keep the fans occupied right now because we got bigger projects right now that we're worried about. And it's all on Matt Rule, and it's all on Troy Dannon and Fred. Just be competitive. Nebraska is, 9 of their losses are in the last 30 seconds of a game. If they win half of those, we're talking about them being a 10 or 11. There's no question that they're in the tournament. You're not going to get rid of Fred Hoiberg. He's got way too much goodwill, I think, in this community. Last year, as was pointed out, Coach of the Year. He had the most dynamic player, arguably, in college basketball last year. They got a bad draw in the NCAA tournament, and they got bad draws in the NIL in the offseason. And I've talked about it on the shows over the last couple of weeks. I think Nebraska is indicative of rolling the dice in the NIL, and you bring in 9 new players, and they know who's making what and trying to develop chemistry with 9 new players. And we're going to see it again next year because they're going to have a huge roster turnover. And, the glue that they had coming back was Williams and Gary and Sam Hoiberg. Those are 3 good players to build a core team around, yet they've never had really good chemistry this year like they've had the last 2 seasons. So it's going to be on Fred, and if they do have a general manager, but remember the general manager works for Fred. In the college game, the GM works for the coach, not the coach working for the GM, right? And and I think Nebraska is right now in an NIL purgatory. And I've also said I think Kansas is in an NIL purgatory. They rolled the dice, they put big money out there, and they ain't got no chemistry, and that's a problem, right? But I look, Nebraska wins tomorrow. They get to Indianapolis. They probably pull off a win there. They're back in the bubble conversation again next week, and this exasperating Nebraska basketball season continues.
Let's get the six-box going.
Yes, six-pack.
Yeah.
Start drinking heavily.
By the way, how much different is this Nebraska basketball team with Rink Mast? You know, Coach Brandon in the stream. Mast is coming back next year. He is a very, very unique basketball player.
Just who you don't have to play if you have Rink.
Do tell.
We'll leave it at that. We know.
They get paid. No, they get paid. You don't have to sit here and just.
Hi, Sharpie. You're muted.
How you doing?
Good.
Hey,
congrats, brother.
Hey, why it's March 8th? Why are we talking about players from last year? That's the problem that's wrong with Nebraska basketball. We keep talking about K-Say. We keep talking about Rink. Why don't we talk about their roster is what it is? I mean,
that's not the problem.
Well, everybody's trying
to
make...
We're not the problem.
No, we're not the problem.
Or are we just not admitting it?
No, we're all the problem. Everybody in the media is angry at each other. You know what? Probably if you think about it and you look at the roster, the season is played out exactly how this roster is built.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying.
So the fact that to win games, you have to play so friggin' hard and your margin of error is so small. It is what it is. And you have to accept the reality. And they've had opportunities. I mean, it's, Saturday or Wednesday night in Columbus is the prime example of Nebraska basketball. Man, yeah, there were some. Are we on just the stream?
Yeah.
There were some shitty calls in that game. Okay. But there's also the fact that you're up 5 in the first overtime and you couldn't close it out. And then you had Bryce, who had a monster game. And I hope to God he's first team all Big Ten. And ball knowers are out there. You know your balls. You know that Bryce Williams should be first team. He missed a free throw. So it's kind of, I don't know. If you take a step back, this season, I think, is exactly how it has been. And you had a couple opportunities to grab a victory that we wouldn't be talking bubblicious on the final day of the regular season. But it is what it is. You have to accept the reality. But maybe guys in the long run, having a season like this where, and I just heard what Bill was saying, and Bill's been strong on this about portal misses, because they had some misses. They swung for some fences, and, it was caught at the outfield wall on the warning track. Maybe this year turns out to be good because it shows you what the expectation of the fan is. Maybe it shows you what the expectation of the athletic department is, and it shows you what you can't do again if you move forward with Fred and his current staff.
We talked last week about the football team, about getting, and this was in relation to the draft and the combine and all that, about getting production out of the guys you do bring in. Yeah. And I'd have to, when you apply that to basketball, I think you got everything you wanted and more out of Gary and Williams, considering their transfer status. It's not easy to say that about really anybody else that's taken the floor this year, though, right? And so in that way, wouldn't you say? And I don't think Nebraska brought in a lot of proven production, right? They brought in guys that had, like Bjornsson, if I'm pronouncing his name right. My God, Bjornsson, whatever. Berke, we'll just call him Berke. That's why they do that in soccer now.
Yeah,
they
just Turkish nightmare.
First names. Berke obviously has a ton of potential. Asijan obviously can be a lights out shooter. Worcester was probably the guy that had the most actual production and the probably biggest body of work to where you might have expected more out of him. But everybody else, you're just kind of hoping.
Well, and I know
they would develop into those players. Within their abilities, because we've also heard this year, Nebraska has no shooters. Like, yeah, they do. Yeah, yeah. Like, Asijan can stroke. He can absolutely shoot.
Let me ask the question. And I know Gary said don't go back to last year, but I'm going to go back to last year. Just because what did we talk about after the game against Texas A&M? Man, Nebraska just needed a point guard, maybe a little more athleticism. If the team this year is the same cast of characters, Bryce Williams, Juwan Gary, Jamarcus Lawrence, CJ Wilcher, you replace Josiah Alec with Andrew Morgan, and you bring in the point guard of Raleigh Worcester, do you think it's a better team this year than what we've seen on the floor? Because I think it's a hell of a lot better.
But they, you know what? After you mentioned that, Nebraska actually got less athletic though, and right, and that was the complaint about them last year. Like Nebraska needs to get a little more athletic. Somehow they got less athletic.
Well, they're very slow in plotting, and I think you look at Ohio State. I mean, Ohio State physically is built different. That's another thing this year is, Ohio State would run the shot clock down, and then when you get under 10, they're like, okay, what do we do? And they put the ball on the floor and get to the rim, and there's nobody, Nebraska hasn't had that guy, and this isn't a new thing. This has kind of been a thing at Nebraska more years than not, where they don't have a physical presence at the rim, where if you think you're going to come to the rim at the end of the shot clock, you're going to pay for it. So it's just, it's almost at one point, we talked maybe a couple Saturdays ago, you're just trying to hold on. And maybe Fred can drag this team across the line to get to the NCAA tournament. We go, man, this might be one of Fred's best coaching years. I don't know. You can't mess with basketball karma, like how you construct your roster, how guys acting with each other, adversity, all of that kind of stuff, how you deal with success, how you deal with failure. I don't know. I'm going to say at the end of the year, this is going to turn out to be a good year for Nebraska because it exposes a lot of things about Nebraska basketball. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. It's just, it's that one sport. And I say this, and, we ride the roller coaster of Nebraska basketball, and we're almost loyal to a fault. The building is packed tomorrow. I mean, most places they'd be like, screw you guys. You've let me down. Yeah. It's full. And we want so badly for Nebraska basketball to be successful and to get that one NCAA tournament victory. But, we're kind of all over the map a little bit from the fan base, I think, on what should be the expectation. What should happen every year. And maybe a year like this kind of narrows it down to, this is what Nebraska ball is. This is what Nebraska ball can be. I don't buy into the notion that it's a bad job. I mean, you play in an NBA arena. You got a really good facility. Nowadays, it doesn't have to be, well, there's no talent in Nebraska. Well, everything's a portal thing now. You're jumping around the place and you're bringing guys in from all over the world. So it's, I don't know. It's going to be interesting when they assess the program when the year is over and how Fred looks at it and how we look at Fred. I know I brought up, and you guys, I think were in agreement with me last week about a GM. I'm almost shifting. I think an elite recruiter might be better than a GM. Where somebody can go down and break down the walls and is smarter with, okay, this guy is asking for $750K. He's not worth it.
Well,
but this guy on the lower end, man, he'd be perfect for us. I mean, it's just, or guys with connections, guys that want to get dirty. To be honest, Matt Abdelmassi came too soon for Nebraska basketball.
I was just going to say that. I was just going to say, man, there's a guy at St. John's, great recruiter. Man, he could be a GM too. I think he could work the transfer portal. I don't know. Got some prior connections to Fred.
I mean, you could go to Charlotte with a bag of cash nowadays, and they're like, hey, that's good. Good on you.
X's and O's
3 years ago, people wanted to get rid of you.
X's and O's wise, Brandon, I think on the 6 box here has played at a higher level than anybody. Highest level I got to was my driveway, so that wasn't great. X's and O's wise, Brandon, is there anything that you're seeing with Fred and his program that you see as sort of a fatal flaw, a fundamental flaw, or do you feel like
you hate
good
the
X's
defense?
And O's wise? Yeah, either on either side of the ball, right? Whether offense or defense. Anything in that department that might account for Nebraska's kind of relative lack of success recently here?
No, I don't think so. I mean, I think you can always find something to take exception with. Your out of bounds stuff. Defense has been some of the choices Nebraska makes there, but I think that piece of it is kind of the part you can put over and leave in the good column for Fred. Like, I think he's really good at that piece of it. And in Nebraska, and it probably, I think, always has to be this way unless you just kind of, find somebody like Gary was mentioning, an ace recruiter who's going to really change things for you in the portal. Like, Nebraska's just going to rank higher on the skill side of the spectrum than it is the physicality. And to that point, against certain teams, you see Ohio State, Maryland's consistently one of those teams where you just, at a certain point, it's just bodies too. And when you're taking kind of this, I think, skill first approach, like, your margin's a little bit thinner. because sometimes physicality just they can make plays for you. Whereas the other way, you're really having to engineer a lot of things.
Don't you think Fred is, and many coaches of his ilk generation, they really just wanted to coach ball and outsmart the guy on the other side and figure out ways to get guys in the right position. But now, Fred's not an old guy. It's not like, he's retiring or he's 65 or something like that. And this NIL game is not what he wants to play, but many coaches are that way right now. I just wanted to coach. I wanted to figure out a way to get my guys to beat that team. And I think he really enjoyed, what was it, 3 years ago, when he shifted to much more of that defensive-minded, hard-nosed team, the Sam Griesel team, and Nebraska, instead of trying to get over 80, happy to win games in the 60s. And that was just great coaching acumen to understand the team that he had on the floor, to put the X's in the right spot to beat the O's on the other side. But now the game is, and same thing with football and all this other stuff in the era that we're in, it's dollars and cents. How can I construct my roster and get the right amount of money to the right guy to come in here and hope that they all mesh together? And then we worry about how we're going to win games. And now I've got locker room issues because guys aren't happy with each other because they know what's being said, what guys are making and all that. And it's hard to get the understanding and the concentration just to get back to the fundamentals of coaching basketball again. I think that's where I think Fred is. And he's going to have to adjust, as all these coaches are going to have to adjust. And some are ahead of the game. Bruce Pearl was way ahead of the NIL transfer portal game, right? I mean, way ahead. He started building for this era when he was at Wisconsin, Milwaukee, or Wisconsin, Green Bay. And he was perfecting it when he was banished from the sidelines for a few years for show cause. But when he found the right job at Auburn and the shackles are taken off, Bruce Pearl was ready. Rick Pitino coming, to St. John's and hiring Matt Abdelmas. He was ready, right? And other guys like Tony Bennett are going, I'm out. I don't want to do this anymore. Jim Larinaga is one of those guys in his 70s going, I'm out. I don't want to do this anymore. Fred is just in that generation of, I just wanted to, coach basketball at a high level at a place I enjoy. And now the game has changed for me as a coach, and I'm having to adjust. But Bruce Pearl, he was ready.
Well, we don't know. And I will tell you this. I know for a fact he hasn't lost the locker room. And Fred still has a competitive drive. So we don't know what he wants. I know that he doesn't want this season to happen again. But if you think about it, like Nebraska has an interesting discussion about basketball when the season comes to an end. On moving forward with the resources they give. And a lot of the NIL guys, if you're thinking about donating to NIL, and remember, this is going to be the biggest offseason for men's college basketball when it comes to NIL, because when we get to the revenue sharing, you can still have it as a circus with NIL. When we get to July 1, there's more scrutiny on it and there's more accountability. So there's going to be a lot of money out there in the market. But NIL comes down to how much belief you have in the head coach. Like Nebraska's NIL for football has gotten better because people believe in Matt Rule. Nebraska's NIL for basketball, in a place that basketball has been, it's been not an afterthought, but it hasn't been number one sport. It's not like Auburn where they've shifted from basketball to football. Do people that want to donate money and support Nebraska basketball and go and get that big wing that can play in the Big Ten, do they believe in the head coach? Because if they believe in the head coach, they're going to reach into their back pocket, and that money they're going to donate, and they're going to say, go get him. Because I know if we get that guy, we got the head coach that can do it. So I think it's a great conversation. It'll be really interesting to see the nuts and bolts when the season is over. Probably at the end of the day, guys, with the decisions that have to be made of moving the program forward, whether it be Fred's in charge with a couple of changes or it's a new regime, is Fred Hoiberg would make it easy on Nebraska if he said, you know what, I have exhausted. I just can't do this anymore, and he retires. I don't know. I don't think he'll do that because I know that he's still got the competitive desire and he will not let this kind of year be on his ledger. But man, I think there's a lot of things in play. It shows you how huge tomorrow is.
Oh, it's big. Vogues, tell us about counterread, counterread.com. I know you got to get out, but thank you.
He's like, I've been trying to do that for like 15 minutes. You guys,
he's been a freaking hostage.
Twice weekly newsletter. You can find us at counterread.com from myself and Aaron Sorensen. Coming up on Monday, I'll react to whatever it is we see on Sunday from Nebraska basketball and try to set the stage for what may or may not lie ahead, I guess. Not working on this for Counter Read, just public service announcement. I'm not going to be able to be at the garage sale during the Husker games, but I need a sideline cape. So seeking volunteers to procure the greatest piece of football equipment there is. So.
Not to get that for you, I'll bid on the Pound the Rock for you.
There we go.
Folks, appreciate you, bud.
Nice, guys.
Thanks, Brandon.
Sideline cape. Good for Vogues.
Can we talk? God.
There's a lot of good things to be at the garage sale. I once got Charles Fryer's used Converse that I used for my softball.
Thank God you said Converse.
Yeah, you said
All right.
Where is this going?
Used con. It was like, oh no,
Converse.
Charles Fryer was a hell of a defensive back.
He was. He was. What do you wear? 10?
Yeah, number 10, and he was the '88 Orange Bowl MVP.
He was a little bitty dude.
Yeah.
Hey,
cousin,
I wonder,
cousin, right?
The obscure stuff that may be available that they found in the back closet. Will there be costumes from the 2014 Harlem Shake video that the Nebraska football team did?
I bet
That's
those
deep track.
Those had to have been personally planned by the players, right? You think the university was shelling out for costumes for some stupid video?
I don't know. Back then, we felt differently about the football team in 14, right?
That is true.
Yeah.
Except for the guy in charge in the power chair, not the guy that was a football coach.
Yep.
I'm still keeping my eye on the Pound the Rock though. I think that could be worthwhile for my front garden.
Hey, it is funny how they've moved it, and now it's got a resting place that when people walk by it, if you know, you're like, man, it got kicked out of the stadium, but not very far away from the stadium. You just can't see the game like you used to in the past.
I love that Bill Callahan spent any amount of time just trying to come up with great motivational ploys and symbolism, on something that he kind of refused to do.
I like to envision Bill Callahan, much like my father, rousing the kids on a Saturday morning. I got a project, and it's just them going out in the woods and finding a big old rock and hauling it down to Memorial Stadium.
Do you think
guys,
they will?
How they say, running the football? They talk about pounding the rock. What if we got a rock and we actually pounded it? Good idea, Bill. We'll get right on that. Yeah,
they got some dudes to Lincoln, man. They just couldn't. They couldn't put everything together. There is. I wonder if they'll do stuff that was left over from coaches' closets. Will we see the coach collection of Bill Callahan, and it'll be nothing but beige Nebraska gear?
Oh yeah,
that's funny.
Yeah, he was not obviously for Nebraska when he wore beige. That was.
Let me ask you this: how much surplus Adidas gear is around from yesteryear? I mean, is there unopened boxes? Adidas? Yeah, is there unopened boxes of the Adidas winter coat zip up that T.O. and Uncle George still rock in the stadium? Or if they're out and about, they're still wearing their gear because it fits and it's warm and it's nice. But I mean, really cool stuff that's vintage now. Is there just some unopened box of the Adidas
old school Herbie, not old school Herbie, but I guess what would now be considered I put it defunct Herbie. Remember the replacement Herbie that Steve Peterson brought in? Mm-hmm. Any logo with that?
The Abercrombie Herbie.
Hey, Coach Darlington still wears periodically some stuff he
shows up.
Yeah, from the time when he was coaching here.
Yeah, they all
Apex
do.
and starter jackets,
free
things like that.
It's free.
Yeah, he'll show up in a sweatsuit.
Uh-huh.
Yeah,
I got mine.
Do you still have your coat?
Colored panels on it?
Oh yeah, I got a lot of. I got one. Gosh, I don't know, 92, 93 winter warmest coat I have, but it would certainly like a throwback to 1991 or something. It's somewhere. Yeah, I've got all, the price was right. and you kept getting all kinds of it. Every year you got more and more, and it was like it's barely used.
Okay,
I think I held a garage sale at my place.
I have an old Husker coat. I think it was from a player because it's got holiday stitched on the front pocket here, not front pocket, like the front breast. Mm-hmm. And I've been trying to figure out for the longest time who that could be.
It was Carlisle.
Sure, it's not Galladay. It might be Galladay.
No, it's
Aaron Galladay.
Holladay. Holiday.
He was Kozad's finest. I'm sure.
As
Tom Osborne would have said at the time, he's in the program.
It was a double XL.
I don't think he's with us any longer. Which
do you think it was a former York product misspelled Aaron Galladay?
Yeah, exactly.
I don't think so.
That's what I was thinking. Yeah.
I have a picture of the coat somewhere here in my phone. Give me a
piece of a tight end.
Yeah.
Good blocker.
Yeah, it was the days when guys used to sell their gear.
It was a double XL, so
no, hey, that was the greatest thing. Like you got to know players and they'd sell you their shoes. They'd also maybe throw in some tickets.
Yeah.
When
mid-80s.
When we go back, so Gary, you alluded a little bit ago before we went garage sale. When is the garage sale, by the way, for folks that don't know?
26th.
26th.
Spring game is Saturday.
Raising some money.
Every day from sun up to sundown is nothing but GBR.
Yep.
It's food trucks, it's garage sales, it's 7-on-7s, and
it's clowns,
Sharpie
guys on stilts.
So
it's basically the Savannah Bananas of college football.
So when we go in June, when we finally get what I guess amounts to somewhat of a salary cap, we call it revenue share, but it's not really a salary cap because now let's kind of lay out what that means. When every school is able to give, what is it, $20.5 million? Is that the correct number? I believe $20.5 million across the athletic department. From what we know now, they can do that and allocate that money however they wish, correct? Mm-hmm. Among all sports. So that's going to be sort of the level playing field across college football. Everybody will be able to do that. But beyond that, you're still going to also have the collectives and the NIL as an additional revenue stream, or not revenue stream, but as an additional way to pay players, basically, right? So in that world, is Nebraska better positioned the same as many others, or in a worse position? Let's start with football, I guess. In that world, I tend to think that Nebraska has an advantage over everybody else because it feels like a lot of athletic departments are going to struggle just to fund that $20.5 million. Could be wrong there. But then you add NIL on top of it, and that's like a separator. Is that how we're supposed to be looking at this? When that era comes, how is Nebraska positioned?
Oh, really?
Question for the group.
I mean, they're going to be. I mean, they're in a good spot. They've been preparing for this, and you got to remember, they're basically just renting space on the campus. I mean, they're completely different from the academic side, so they can, they're in a stronger position. Oh, they're in a good spot. You know why they're in a good spot? And I was having a discussion with somebody yesterday about this. Finally, and this pertains to Nebraska football, it's about winning. It's not about the coach parked in the loading dock and the AD's got to go tell him that he's got to move his truck every single day. And we're worried about this and we're worried about this. They're focused on winning. I mean, it can be such a nauseating conversation about Nebraska football because it seems like it's all about stuff that has nothing to do with winning. They're finally focused on winning instead of all the other drama and the outside stuff. And so that also pertains to this when it comes to revenue sharing. They're in a good spot. They're in a really good spot. And, I think, it comes down to your coaches, Yeah.
It
comes down to your performance. Yeah. If everybody is kind of on the level playing field, like the Alabama football and KU basketball are glad that, now everybody's back to level one. They used to have an advantage. Then people could do what they were doing. Now everybody's doing the same thing. But I also think this is another step, guys. Nebraska's in a good spot, and I think Nebraska's in a good spot as well. Now they got to win when football breaks away from everything else around 2030.
And becomes an independent. Yeah. It's already
Football is not created like anything else on college campuses. The model, the money,
it's been like that.
It needs it will break away, but then everything else can stay under the umbrella of the NCAA. But football can be its own entity, and I think everybody would root for that. Even the lower level schools would root for that. So I think Nebraska's in a good spot because they've been planning for it. And let's be honest, they're the only show in town.
Yeah,
for sure.
So how would we? You mentioned it, Gary. Maybe it is just coaching, and let's just talk about that because I feel like every other theory for why Nebraska has not performed well, and why it's been a carousel of coaches going back to since Frank was whacked. You've heard, well, it's facilities or it's Nebraska's location, Midwest or northern schools. Can't have that. Meanwhile, Iowa State, Kansas, North Dakota State, North Dakota. Meanwhile, all the schools that border Nebraska have had great success. So, okay, so you throw that excuse out the window. That's not true. It has nothing to do with location. Manhattan is, come on, right? And they've had plenty of success. So you can't say it's that. Not even sure you could say it is like level of investment. Nebraska's paid coaches. Scott Frost was a top end guy. He paid him. Can't say it's facilities. It really does come down to at some point, and we've also blamed the administration. Well, there's no connection between the chancellor and the athletic director and the coach. And sure, that's a problem if you believe in leadership and all those things. Of course, that has been an issue. But at some point, it just does come down to the football, right? It comes down to what do you tolerate? What do you not? Right. And how much are you going to tolerate? How much are you going to tolerate poor performance or guys kind of doing their own thing when it comes to training or nutrition? It does come down to that. And when you consider that, if you look at all the staffs that Nebraska has had since Frank, let's just go back to since Frank was whacked. You look at all those coaching staffs, the amount of combinations that Nebraska's had since then is dizzying. It hasn't been the same staff every year, I don't think at all. There's always been some sort of change, of course. The way this staff is constructed, would we say that it's Nebraska's best fighting chance because there are so few flyers that have been taken on some of the coaches? You would say maybe Phil Simpson in terms of like qualifications to coach at the level that he is, but you might have an argument there of just like, okay, it's a big jump up for him. But everybody else on the staff feels really well qualified to have the position that they have. I'm not sure you could say that about many other staffs at Nebraska going back a while, right? Where it's just like across the board, 100% qualified, no question about it.
This is the best staff.
Like, what? Is that guy really ready for this position? Right? I mean,
they've got big boy. They've got big boy coaches for the first time since Bo. They got big time staff.
Schmidt, great call, because I went back after Eckler was speaking the other day. Man, Bo, one of Eckler's last years here, I think it was 2010. Nebraska's staff was pretty good. I mean, you had the combination of the combination of Eckler, Marvin Sanders, and Carl Pelini on the defensive side was pretty good.
That's solid.
At the end of the day, it all comes back to the guy that's in the power chair with the biggest headset. Is your coach do they have the tools in the toolbox to run a Fortune 500 company from off field to on field? Did they make the right hires? Are they able to block out the noise? And are they able to do their job, which they were brought here? And that is coach football. And they're either good or they're not good or they're in between. I think we got to talk about, that's the thing about this year is I think desperately you want Nebraska to break through because Rule is a very likable person that wears the brand really, really well. But you need him to break through and to get rid of that stigma that at the end of the day, he's a 500 football coach.
Fellas, I have got to hit a memorial service. I will holler at you tomorrow at 10:30 live. Go ahead.
Sorry for what you are going to, but that was quite the insert of a downer there.
Well, not intentional. A lot of good memories. Storm and Norman was my dad's best friend, and
we love Nebraska football, by the way.
Well, it was hilarious going out to Boulder with my dad, cousin Dino, and Norm. And Boulder pukes would try and pick on him, and there's 3 old men that would put anyone and everywhere under the table. We called it the CC Olympics, Canadian Club. So we love you, Norm, and we're going to celebrate you, Norm. You guys carry on. We'll holler again.
Okay, Chris.
Thanks, Schmidt.
Yep.
And I got only a couple minutes here for you guys because I'm on the road.
Well, then I do quickly want to ask about Husker baseball.
Are they
Washington today? Doubleheader today, 1 and 4 p.m. against Washington.
McConaughey out for the season. Just want to quickly, Gary, I know you're preoccupied with the Mavs, who had one of the worst sticker placements I have ever seen on the Summit League tournament in the back hallway there. I'm not sure. That was rough. I know you're doing all that, but Husker baseball, I just want to get your thoughts on what happens post McConaughey. The Huskers have a lot of arms, but not a single arm, I think, outside McConaughey that you truly feel confident in.
I would say, do you feel confident in Rob Childress? I think it's been more of a concern about the offense and veteran guys not swinging the bats than the arms, but the bullpen has been iffy. I think they'll manage it through, but I think this is where the offense now picks it up before they get things figured out on the weekend. I'm not ready for Big Ten conference weekend.
No.
I mean,
no.
How are we here? Lincoln isn't ready for it either.
Yeah. I think it's the one thing is you can't, I like Mason a lot. And he waited his turn. He was a great Saturday guy last year. He moved into that role. And he's pumping mid-90s. And you thought it was precautionary when he got taken out last week. And then you get the news that he's out for the year with the arm injury. I think this team, though, is veteran-led, that they're not going to let this deter their season. Their goals are still out there. It's just they're going to have to find that guy, like McConaughey last year. He stepped up on a Saturday. Who's the guy? Is it Ty Horn that steps up that was Saturday guy? Now, all of a sudden, he's quicker into the ace role than you would have imagined. I don't think they'll crumble, but, man, getting off to a good start on Friday nights is pretty important in this league, and that's going to be a significant loss. But I got a feeling that Rob Childress will string this together, and then you're going to need some guys to go over their skis. This is a great opportunity for Drew Christo to finish up his career in a strong way.
Oh, man. Can we talk about that? Because, you mentioned a lot of arms, and Nebraska's brought in some touted arms, and Christo is key on that list. Currently, he ranks last in ERA on the entire team at 15 plus. There's a guy that I can't. If you're now in this situation that Rob Childress is in, where you just lost your top guy, and you also lost Timmerman, who was figuring prominently, right? Yeah, 2 of your top arms, really. You have to shake things. I don't know that you can just sit there and be like, well, that just means that we just kind of slide a different starting pitcher into the mix. I think you have to look at your entire staff. And I look at guys like Jalen Worthley as it feels like he can contribute more than they let him contribute right now. He's that setup guy. He's that middle relief guy. He's now in his second year right now. He was consistently good last year, a couple tough outings, but that's normal. He's been really good this year. If you're Rob Childress, you consider even mixing that stuff up to where it's like, yeah, the plan was you're my late relief, middle relief guy, but things have changed. And, maybe we look at Worthley as, let's see if we can get 4 or 5 out of him to start a game, considering his veteran status. It's not going to, the moment wouldn't be too big for him. I feel like Childress is going to have to get creative.
Does he have to get creative this weekend, or can he wait to see what the result is? Because I think you don't want to panic.
No.
I know, and I think if you have established some roles for guys that you think that's best suited for them, I think you'd rather keep them in those roles things have changed. But they need that, they need that one person to step up that all of a sudden realize they have a huge opportunity here. I don't know. I like him where they have him right now, but you are right. He is somebody that on a spot could give you 4 to 5, but I mean, are you going to go with a closer or an opener philosophy?
Right. Let's talk about that. That's exactly what I was just thinking about. And folks that maybe haven't followed baseball.
Well, the guy I have circled for that role is unfortunately out for the next 5 weeks with Timmerman.
Yeah, right.
I think Timmerman could be that guy that goes and gets you 4 innings to start off a Sunday game. And goes. I'm not sure how deep he can go into a baseball game, but he's going to be out. He just had the surgery last week, so.
And for folks that maybe,
I think this comes down to Will Walsh for some reason. They got him penciled in as the game 2 weekend starter now. And he's been kind of an enigma the last couple of years. You can get some great stuff from him, and you can get some good things over at first base stuff from him. I think there's a lot that's going to focus on how well he pitches in those Saturday weekend series in terms of how well Nebraska does. If things don't go well on Friday with Horn, oh my God, there's your hinge on Saturday with Walsh. If he stays in that second position in a weekend series, and then Brockett, well, you just hope he throws a no-hitter every Sunday from here on out, right? That's not going to happen. But I just look at Will Walsh as it's a great opportunity for him. But how many innings can you get out of him on Saturday? Is it going to be pitched by committee? That's become in vogue in the majors, right?
That's what I'm saying.
We saw the Dodgers in the World Series, for Pete's sake, pitching an all-staff game. And
that's what I'm saying. Yeah.
Is that what Walsh's job is on Saturdays? Just get us 3 strong out of the gate.
It's like you manufacture pitching almost.
Yeah.
Right?
And
seriously.
Go back to, look, we put a lot on Rob Childress, and I'm sure there's other great, pitching coaches in the college game, but I think we're all like, okay, that was a really good hire, especially right now in this moment for somebody to manage this staff. And because I think the bats are going to come around. Eventually, they're going to start scoring some runs. It seems like right now they're in kind of a funk, and they score 3 runs in that doubleheader last week at Louisiana. Didn't get a chance to swing any because of the weather this week. Didn't get the South Dakota State game. Didn't get the Omaha game, which you'd like to have had those 2 games going into your weekend series. But I'm confident the bats are going to start producing 5, 6, 7 runs a game. But I look at Walsh and Childress and game 2 of those series as the whole key to everything.
Here's what worries me about this, though, because I hear what you're saying, Bill. Like, I think he is one of those, and that's kind of what I was thinking about with Worthley. Like, okay, here's a proven guy that is a veteran, that he has some flexibility beyond just pitching innings 6 and 7. But what do you? If you're Childress, can you rely on what amounts to streaky shooters, right? Like, because that's what Christo is. That's what Walsh is.
That's what Walsh is.
Right? They're streaky shooters. When they're on, lights out. All 3 of them. When they're not,
go to first base.
Yeah. Well,
right? It's sort of like Bo Pelini-esque big stage defense meltdown time.
Well, Brian is right in the stream. They need to play some midweek games. They have guys that just need to throw. They played 3 straight weekends of high level baseball where you're not treating it like spring training. I mean, these are games that count, and so they need to play some midweek games to get some guys some innings. But I just think Rob Childress, the season's way too young to say, well, we're screwed, and you got to find a way, and you challenge guys. They're on a scholarship for a reason. Okay. Yeah. Here's your great opportunity. You know what? Brett Sears seized it. Look what happened to him. Mason McConaughey seized it. Unfortunately, he's down for an injury. Who is the next guy that becomes that kind of off the radar that all of a sudden has electrifying stuff and isn't a soft tossing lefty, but a guy when you need a strikeout with a guy on 3rd and 2 out in the 7th inning before you give way to the bullpen can get that guy, and I think they'll find it. But I think for right now, it's the offense that's going to have to carry the pitching staff. They're going to have to start putting up some crooked numbers. And also, they're kind of a front-running team right now. When they get off to a good start, you feel a lot better. I just think the bats will be the thing this weekend while they figure out the pitching staff. But I got confidence in Rob that he can string things together before they solidify some things and guys get into their roles. I just don't think you want to shake you don't want to shake guys up that are mentally are going, okay, I'm going to pitch the 6th inning. Okay, now all of a sudden you're telling me I'm starting.
Fair.
Yeah. So until you have to make that change, I don't think you do. But Jesus, it sucks to lose McConaughey, man. He is a strike thumper, and they need that on a Friday night. And now you got some guys that burn the back of the bullpen trying to throw it through the wall. Can they do it when they get out on the bump? And we're about to find out. They need a blowout or two, guys, where they can have guys come in and pitch 1-2 innings, 2 innings here, so they see some arms in some leverage situations.
That's why the weather did not do Nebraska any favors this week.
No,
because they would have had the game with Omaha. They would have had the game with South Dakota State. You get those bats going a little bit, carry a little bit of momentum going into the Big Ten opener with Washington. You kind of figure out, okay, how live are my arms right now? If we got to do a Johnny Allstaff against Washington, which game is that going to be? And but Nebraska hasn't played in a week.
Yeah.
Right. So they needed that. Now they're going to go doubleheader today, game Sunday. Then I think where they have Tuesday, Wednesday, or Monday, Tuesday. They've got like 5 straight. Well, they were supposed to have 5 straight days of games, and the Wichita State series and OSU. The weather has screwed that up, to get bats in a rhythm for a Big Ten conference opening series.
So it's probably. Go ahead, Elijah.
I was just going to get Sharpie out of here because I know he's got things to do today. I just want to quickly get a thought from you, Sharpie. What's coming up from the Mavs this weekend? I know they're fighting. Got to go win the tourney if you want to get a spot in the NCAA tournament. So
they play tonight, actually on CBS Sports Network, but you can listen to the game in Omaha. 7:00, South Dakota.
Who's the play-by-play guy?
He's a good guy. Good guy. Met him many times.
Good man. Good man.
Actually, he went to bed and woke up in the same room I'm in right now. It'll be a good game. South Dakota last night rallied to beat North Dakota State. We had a North Dakota upset South Dakota State here. Trayson Eaglestaff had 51. The kid wears number 52. He had 51 to beat South Dakota State. So all 4 teams that are left here have never made the NCAA tournament. But here's the caveat. And Omaha hasn't played since Thursday as the number 1 seed. If Omaha, so the best route is to win the next 2 for Omaha and they get in the NCAA tournament for the first time ever. But if they don't and St. Thomas wins the tournament, Omaha goes to the NCAA tournament because St. Thomas is transitioning from Division III to Division I. This is their last year. They're not eligible for the tournament. So the regular season champion gets in, and that would be Omaha. But I can tell you, after being around these guys, and it seems like we've been in Sioux Falls for 10 days, they don't want that scenario. They want to win tonight, win tomorrow, and cut down the nets and go to the NCAA tournament 1 week from tomorrow when they hear their name announced.
Do you have a 1 seed circled in the NCAA tournament yet, or am I looking too far ahead?
I would rather go to Dayton, where you have a chance to win a game, get a unit, and get some attention. But somebody was telling me yesterday that if Omaha wins both, they're probably going to be a 15.
Okay.
So maybe Omaha against Michigan State, who has Frankie Fiddler, who played at Omaha last year in Cleveland.
Gary, quickly, one more thing. If you, most folks listening, watching probably have not seen Omaha. They're not televised a lot, right? You just don't get to see them a lot. So unless you attend a game in person, probably haven't seen them much. What kind of team is it? What is their style? What would people notice about this Mavericks squad?
Defensively, like they're really good. They're not built like a typical Summit League team. They're long. They're very athletic. A lot of Summit League teams are built with 5 out, where you just have a bunch of shooters and threes are plenty. They have the player of the year in Markel Sutton, who, has been fantastic. He had a double-double the other night. He's a great player. He's a junior college guy, so he has 1 year left. He's going to make a lot of money in the offseason, jumping up to a Power 5. And they have a really good point guard in J.J. White. It's a really well-constructed team. They're fun to watch. They get up and down the floor. They get after you a little bit. This should be an exciting game. South Dakota, they're the 4th highest scoring team in the country behind Alabama, Gonzaga, and Kentucky. So these two teams played they played a 91-87 game, and they played 93-85. They've split the 2 games. I'll be curious to see how many South Dakota fans are here in Sioux Falls, because they don't support their team in Vermillion, which is crazy. They have a beautiful arena. So it should be fun tonight. I mean, it's the second straight year Omaha's been in the semis. They've been to the final twice. They just have never been able to go to the NCAA tournament yet.
They also have a Delano Banton doppelganger in Cameron Thomas from a distance, anyways.
Yeah.
Did you not see that?
Yeah.
Right from a distance,
Yeah.
not face wise, but 6'8", really
He's
long.
He's really good defensively.
Yeah.
So, well, I hope everybody. I know a lot of people are rooting for the Mavs. We're kind of like, we were going through it back in the COVID year, 5 years ago, and there was a famous picture of the Crips and the Blood that met at 120th and Center in Omaha, and they were holding their neckerchiefs.
Yeah.
They were holding them together, the blue and the red. That's kind of how Omaha is. Nebraska fans and Creighton fans are rooting for Omaha. Everyone is for Omaha.
Yeah. Everyone for Omaha. Have a good call, Gary.
Hey, thank you. Well, how long do you guys think you'll go? If I come back like in an hour, will you still be going? One more thing.
Let's see you come back on. Are you getting to the arena?
I have to go do something. I'll come back in an hour.
All right.
Have a great weekend, guys.
We'd love to have you.
Hey, Gary.
You too, Gary. You too. This is different.
This is
I've
great.
never seen the triple vertical box before.
Oh yeah, it's the new thing we're doing on the weekday show. I think it works better on mobile devices. Can you
zoom out a little bit on me? I mean, what is wow?
You can back your chair up.
Yeah, I think you have to zoom out on yourself.
Okay.
Well, I finally have a chance here to ask the question, and I pose the question to everybody who listens to the Average Joe Sports Show, especially in video form. If you can identify this jacket, it's in my closet. Let me know. It's Holiday with an H.
HOLADAY.
Maybe just some fan who got it embroidered. I don't know. Fantastic jacket. It's a little large on me. It's a double XL. So
that's hilarious. It probably is that. You're going to do some deep Google search trying to look at all the rosters and be like, okay, walk-ons circa early 1990s, Holiday, keep coming up empty, but it's actually just some guy named Frank Holiday
from Gibbon.
Yeah, right. It's just it's not that deep.
Yeah. The note with this is if you're looking for more information on the jacket, whenever I got it, there was sand in the pocket. So I'm thinking maybe somebody took on an Orange Bowl trip. I don't know. Sand in the pockets.
It didn't come with a certificate of authenticity, I take it. So
no, leave it to a Nebraska fan in December or January to get to a bowl trip in Miami and put on an Apex jacket. That doesn't make much sense. I mean, it's like low of upper 60s at that time in Miami. How did you get sand?
I've seen it happen. Pocket? I have seen it happen outside the Sheraton Bell Harbor when we would arrive for bowl games, that Husker fans and Germans would populate the beach and be wandering around when it was 55 to 60 degrees outside, but it wasn't 20 in Lincoln. There was a beach and they were going. Right? Yeah.
And how do you distinguish between the Germans and the Huskers?
Speedos.
Usually it was. Yeah, thank you. Sheridan Ball Harbor. There was also a hotel with blue in it, if I'm not mistaken. I can't remember.
Fontainebleau.
The Fontainebleau, yes.
Mm-hmm.
Those were kind of the two spots. Yeah, that's easily how you would tell the Germans and the Nebraskans apart. Although a lot of Nebraskans with German lineage, so both very pale, very pale.
Yeah. And Jordan is right. Jordan is right. They could have been playing golf and taking the coat, but that's not as good a story as taking the coat to the beach in Miami. It's part of the bit, right?
Anyway, I think it could be a great story behind this jacket. I want to get to the bottom of it. If you have any inkling of where that jacket came from,
I don't even recall seeing that jacket of all the stuff we used to get back in the day. So that might be post, the post 90s when I was no longer getting free stuff, but I don't recall seeing that one.
Well, that logo is kind of interesting because it's the black in with the red Huskers over the top, right? You didn't see that a ton. It was used. It's normally the red in, right? Or the white in, but black in, red Huskers on top. I think I had a jacket very similar to that, and I can confirm I never put Holiday on it. Never stitched that.
That's the great mystery is who would get the Holiday stitched on the right breast here. So if you have any idea, send us an email. The AJ Sports Show @gmail.com is where you reach out to the show. So send us an email there. Hey, if you're looking for some advertising for your company, the AJ Sports Show @gmail.com. Send us an email. Plenty of great ways. That's the best way to get in contact with the show. As Bill points, your business name here on the stream of the Average Joe Sports Show, weekend edition or weekdays, whatever you so choose, or both. You can also reach out to any of us on social media except Mark, because I know Mark is not on social media right now. So you can reach out to us. We keep our handles down on the live stream as well. So pull us up on YouTube and find the handles at Herbal Essences for me. I keep my DMs open.
And not just right now, by the way, Elijah. I'm not getting on it. Did you ever watch The Social Experiment? Have you watched any of the documentaries on what's happening on social media?
Coach Brandon with a great theory here. Check out the track team. Doesn't necessarily have to be football with that jacket.
Fair.
Yeah.
Rifle's been around a while.
Wrestling. I'm trying to dive into like the double XL nature. It's a large jacket. I'm a decently sized guy. It's massive on me. So whoever had that jacket was a large individual.
Yeah, well, it looks great. I'd like to see you wear it more often. I haven't really seen you do that.
I mean, it's a dress on me. Like it's big. So I only pull it out whenever I got a lot of layers on, because that's the only time it's really gonna fit me, is whenever I have extra thickness on me.
Y'all at the Nebraska Iowa game tomorrow, or are you just watching it on television?
Schmidt's gonna be there. I will be watching on television.
I'll be watching on television after I go buy new television, since mine went out last night. And yeah.
Okay, yeah. That's big news. Let's go there.
Yeah.
How long did you have a flat panel? Of course.
Yep.
And we're not talking about a tube, right? Because remember, the first HDs had the big thing, and when it goes out, right, that's why. Okay, so flat panel. What, LG, Philips?
LG. It was made. It was made to fail. I know it. I don't have the old RCA console or the Zenith that has the 8-track.
65.
No. I don't have that big of an apartment. So yeah.
The TV prices nowadays are kind of ridiculous compared to what they were, say, 5 years ago.
Really dropped.
Yeah.
Right. So, but how big are we talking? Like, what it
was about I feel 40 some inch probably. Yeah.
So are you ready to go bigger screen? Because I kind of feel like anymore, I don't think you can go below 50 anymore. I know it sounds weird, but I just don't.
Well, it's as you look at the prices, I have a 70-inch TV in my living room. Me and my roommates split it on a Black Friday years ago. And the Black Friday deal for it was like $750, $800. And you look at 70-inch TVs now, and it's like, oh, a nice little $350 70-inch TV. It's wild what the prices have done.
Yeah, well, but if I got one of those, it would be like sitting in the front row of the Cooper Theater watching Top Gun, right? Where you're just, it's just like, if I got that big of a TV in my apartment, I would not be able to see all of it in one view, and I'd have to pan side to side to catch the whole thing.
Yeah, but once you make the change, you never go back to those massive TVs. Those massive TVs are great.
Hold on.
Now, Bill, maybe there's one available at the garage sale.
Bill, hold on, Bill. So now that makes a difference, because if we're talking about confined space, that matters. Then if you're setting the TV on something versus mounting it, because that'll buy you a few extra inches, maybe a foot, maybe two. Where are we at there? Are you mounting the TV, or is this
probably not mounting? Probably not. Yeah.
Would you consider
not
it?
at this stage? Not at this stage.
We want to get you a bigger screen. I mean, you know what I mean? Like, it went out. Here's your chance. I kind of just feel like, right? Because you're probably going to be with this TV for the next.
That's
decade.
a relationship. Yeah, I got a relationship. This one, was made 7-year itch. It was made to fail. So, yeah.
You're going to go 4K minimum, right?
Well, you really don't need to go more than 4K. So, any suggestions that folks have for an appropriate TV? I mean, I got the LG. It served me well. Is there something better out there that's been manufactured in the last 7 years?
Well,
I've not been in the market.
He's got a good OS.
We just hit it. If you got a suggestion, email the ajsportsshow@gmail.com.
Yeah.
My advertising classes back in college told me repetition. Repetition is the way to go.
Otherwise, I'm going to be watching the game on my phone and like trying to decipher what's actually happening, which,
I think you're good to stick with LG. I think it's funny you bring up you don't need to go more than 4K. Did you know, like, beyond 4K, it's actually imperceptible to like the human eye?
They said that same thing about like 120 hertz on screens as well, and it's not true. I want to dive into the research there.
Supposedly, the human eye is only capable. It stops at like 5K or something like that. And anything beyond that, it's just like you literally cannot perceive it. Who Who knows? I'm not a scientist. All right. I'm just a weekend podcast host, part-time. Right. So I don't know. Well, 3-putt brings in a good point though. LG has annoying cursor, can't shut off. It's true. You hit the little thumb wheel, right? You press down on it. You got this cursor. You're like, oh my God, how do I get out of here? That's tough. Other than that, their OS is pretty good though. I would say Roku, like the what is the company out? It's a Chinese company. I have it. I've had it forever, and they have Roku built in, like specifically built into the television. Why can't I think of it? I've had it for damn near 10 years. It's a good one too. Vizio like pricing, right? It's not quite at the LG echelon. When I get to go walk over and look at the brand name that I've seen 4 million times, and huh? What is it? No.
Hisense? No.
Can you give me 2 seconds? I'm just going to go look right now. Can't remember.
This is what the weekend edition of the Average Joe Sports Show is all about.
Yeah.
This is what Average Joe
TCL.
Oh, yeah.
TCL. You want bang for your buck? TCL.
No,
not bad.
There you go.
Well, on that note, that might be a good place to end the show here.
Yeah, Shaggy's here, so when Shaggy shows up, it's time to call it good. Come on, buddy.
Let's see Shaggy.
Vizio has annoying watch TV Vizio app. Can't shut off, says 3-putt.
There's Shaggy.
And thank you, Steve, for saying TCL before I was able to go confirm. Yeah.
Well, that'll do it for us here on a Saturday morning edition of the Average Joe Sports Show. Shaggy has made the appearance. Mark has gone down the rabbit hole of televisions. And again, find the podcast wherever you get podcasts, but Spotify, Apple Podcasts, great place to get it. Search up the Average Joe Sports Show. If you're watching on YouTube, thank you. If you're not watching on YouTube, it's a great way to do it on Saturday mornings. Subscribe to us on YouTube, the Average Joe Sports Show, and catch us on a Sunday morning, the Sunday Live, 10:30. Gary Sharp, Bill Doleman, Chris Schmidt, myself. No invite from Mark Kraynak.
Ouch!
I noticed.
We might get
pointing that out.
I think Schmitty's going to have to leave the show a little early tomorrow to make it down to Pinnacle Bank Arena. So maybe we'll have the gap for you tomorrow, Mark. We'll see.
Well, I'm going to the game as well. So if you want to report from the road, that's probably when I'll be on the road. Yep. Making the pilgrimage.
Yeah. Hit the like button, subscribe, find us wherever you get podcasts, and find us on social media as well. Search up the Average Joe Sports Show on formerly Twitter, now X. So all great places to catch the show. And one final time, if you got any ideas for the show, advertising, anything of the sort, the ajsportshow@gmail.com is where you send the email. For all the gentlemen today, Brandon Vogel, Gary Sharp, Chris Schmidt, it's Bill Doleman, Elijah Herbel, and Mark Kraynak signing off on a Saturday morning edition. We'll talk to you tomorrow morning.